Welcome to the MuseCast, where we squeeze every last drop of inspiration out of Sunday's sermon.
Well, hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us for the MuseCast. I'm Shawna. That's Dan. And you guys, we have Lambers Fisher here. Yay! Welcome, Lambers. We're so thankful that you had some time in your day to join us and to bless our MuseCast community. Dan, we have to tell the community what happens every time before we start rolling and you say, Shawna, are you ready? What happens?
Well, you laugh and you have like this, it's like humor gas or something that you just got to let out. There's like a valve that you have to open and all of the humor gas goes out. And then once it's mostly out, then that's when we start.
That's when we go. So Dan, is it you? Is it your presence, your being that draws that out of me?
I have that effect on a lot of people. That a lot of people see me and they laugh. So, I don't know.
Oh, good. Hey, you guys, we've been having some gorgeous weather. Remember, Dan was down in Florida and he came back up home to be with us and he brought the sun with us and it's been lovely. And then yesterday, I don't know what happened. We had a lovely blizzard. Did you guys get caught out in that at all, or were you safe, snuggled indoors?
That was pretty good. Nice, and we got a chance to see it from the inside of a warm window.
Yep,
nice.
That was good. That's the best way.
Exactly.
That's the best way. How about you, Dan?
I was inside also, and I did everything through this portal that we are currently in right now. So I spent all day in this portal yesterday. And Shawna, you were in some of those meetings. And so, yeah, Mondays are full of meetings. So I had no idea what was going on until about 3:00. And I went outside and I felt like I needed to go get the Christmas decorations. So it's a different world. Yeah.
Greg had a flat tire out in that yesterday that he had to try to figure out how to change.
Yeah.
Anyway. Awesome. Well, the reason why Lambers is here, you guys, is because he was a part of the panel that we got to listen to on Sunday, and it was kind of like a part two. Remember, we told you last week to stay tuned, that we would be drilling into this a little bit more. And so the way we did that at Woodland this weekend was to have Kevin and Lambers and Osheta join Greg on stage for a panel discussion and to dive into some of this stuff. And it was really great. And so Dan does have a summary. It's not going to be the normal summary. I'm very sorry. Don't be disappointed. And just to remind you all of who Lambers is, he is a therapist, a counselor. He works at Christian Heart Counseling. He's gifted, talented, loves the Lord, and just really is all about helping folks. And so we'll let Lambers say what he wants to say about what he does in a little bit. You're going to hear a lot from him. But again, thank you, Lambers, for being here. There is only so much you can get to in those discussions. And so we just felt like it would be an amazing gift to just ask him more questions while we got him here. So we're going to be on the couch and Lambers is going to answer questions for us. And it's going to be great. Go ahead, Dan.
All right. Well, I guess the best way to introduce what was talked about this weekend is I like starting with just the titles of the messages. Last week, the previous week, Greg had a sermon called Say Farewell to Anger. And this week it was called Say Hello to Anger. And so it sounds like it's backwards, but the reason for that is because he in the first sermon, he really looked at how the Bible tells us to let go of anger and to not let the sun go down on our anger. And I think that there's this temptation right now to be angry and people have sort of married their anger. And so this teaching to let go of our anger kind of comes back against a lot of that. And so Greg really took that idea of letting go of our anger out and just let it run. The problem though, is that, anger is there for a reason, and you can be reckless in how you let go of your anger. And so Greg got a lot of really great pushback and feedback on that, and being the always teachable teacher that Greg is, and he's such a great role model in that way, he decided to have a panel kind of talk about some of those things this week. And so this week it was called Say Hello to Anger. And the idea is that you can't really say farewell to anger if you haven't said hello to anger. And I thought that was a really great way that Greg said that. And so, being that it was a panel discussion, it kind of went wherever the discussion went. And so there was no logical theme to it. It was just all around this idea of how do you deal with anger in a healthy way. But a couple nuggets that I pulled out that I really liked is this distinction that Kevin made between righteous indignation and righteous condescension. And I think that's really big, because I think a lot of people confuse those two things. And if you think about it, those ideas, righteous indignation, where we feel like we've been indignified, that's the exact opposite of condescension, where you look down on somebody else. And if we confuse those two ideas, we can be condescending to others when we think we're being indignant, when we think we're trying to defend our dignity. In fact, we're reducing somebody else's dignity. And so I thought that was a very valuable distinction. I want to come back to some of the what Lambert said about all emotions are legitimate. And I think that's right, but I want to explore that a little bit more. And then I loved what Osheta said about given that we are secure in God's unsurpassable love for us, we don't have to be afraid of our anger. We can be curious about our anger, and we can explore it. And I think that was a really good way of framing it, because in order to, I think, get rid of our anger the way that the Bible calls us to, in the way that I think that the Bible wants us to, we have to respect it, and we have to explore it, and we have to find out why it was there. And so those are some of the big ideas that were shared on Sunday. I probably missed some important things, but
that's all right.
There was just too much. There's too much there.
There was a lot of good stuff. Yeah. And Greg, I remember we talked about this last week, you and I, Dan, and he did say, he really talked about not partnering with that anger, not going on that journey with anger. And he did acknowledge, it is like the warning sign on your dashboard that you need to pay attention to. And he just didn't, in a sermon, you can't hit all the things. And so he was he admitted yesterday that his focus was more on the verse and what that means and how we can judge certain people, but we've already kind of done some of that stuff in our own brain. And so I love that we kind of, like I said, came back for round 2 to kind of further talk about this aspect of anger. Mm-hmm. What that did, though, and what it always does, is it causes people to have questions and wonderings, and you can't always deal with that in the moment in a service. And so we got a certain question that, Lambers, we want to hit you right out of the gate with. That is a direct response to the little sermonette that Greg gave and the panel discussion. So we'll start there, and then we'll have some other questions for you.
Sounds good.
All right. So this person said, is the victim of abuse from another person responsible for doing whatever it takes to make sure this never happens again? I don't think so. And the talk today came off like that to me. The victim needs to get away, and someone else has the job to address the abuser. And so I think we need to address this, unpack it, clarify, and just help put this questioner a bit more at ease. Can you help us with that, Lambers?
Definitely. I think it's a great question, and I'm so glad that someone felt comfortable enough to share that, because I wouldn't want that misunderstanding to linger. The short answer is it is not the victim's responsibility to put their abuser at ease. There's a couple of things that stick out to me. One is the most important one, is that responsible word. It is one that tends to put blame or burden. If it really meant that much to you, you should have told me, and you should have told me exactly what I needed to do. And if you didn't, then you can't really expect me to have done anything different, because you didn't give me all the tools that I needed to not. It's like it goes down this horrible spiral where if I'm the person feeling hurt, then I can't protect myself and then teach you what you need to do to stop hurting me. Anything that I'd offer is bonus. Anything that I can muster to help you is bonus. It's a gift. It's a grace gift. But that responsible part, we all have a responsibility to protect ourselves, to teach ourselves, to grow. And so if I shift that, then the victim has a responsibility to do whatever is in their reasonable power to protect themselves and to remove themselves from an active threat. And the person who is the abuser has the responsibility to say, to see what's going on. Hey, that response is not what I expected. Is there something I said? Is there something I need to do differently? I have the responsibility to be attentive and then to learn and then to grow. Not how dare you have done it in the first place. That just goes into guessing why it was the case. If it was on purpose, that's different than if they had no clue that what they said was hurtful. But if we shift that responsibility word, no, emphatically no. The person who's feeling victimized doesn't have the responsibility to. But if they can, that's where some of the comments came. If I have the opportunity to say, I see you coming at me, and you know what? Right now, I'm not that hurt. I'm inconvenienced, but I have the ability to say, to see what you're trying to do and to help redirect that so that it doesn't get worse. That's a gracious opportunity, depending on what position that person is in. But that's inconvenienced versus hurt versus offended versus abused versus, like, there's different degrees there. And at no point in time from the very beginning, even at the very beginning, it's not my responsibility, even if I'm not that hurt. It's a gift because I have more to offer. The less I have to offer, the less you're going to get, but it's still a gift either way. And so if somebody's feeling abused, victimized, oppressed, whatever the case may be, no, it is not your responsibility. Everyone else has a responsibility to learn on their own. And the goal in this whole conversation is to get to the point where we're trying to understand each other better so that we are able to maintain as much strength and much empowerment as we can, such that if we can have something to offer, we can. If we don't feel judgment about it. I have to worry about my feelings and then feel guilty that I don't have enough because I'm supposed to be able to help you. I'm supposed to be able to focus on you, but then we're just judging ourselves. But then the beautiful part is the people on the outside also have an opportunity, not a responsibility, but an opportunity to say, I see you have a responsibility to change your actions because you're hurting somebody else. But I see that you don't get it either. I see that you don't see what you're doing. I see that you don't see how you're hurting the other person. I can choose to help. Not because it's my burden, because I'm helping the other person who's victimized. And I see the person who's victimized and say, if you could help the other person understand, you would. But I see that this is hurting you so much that you can't. Maybe I can come in and help. See, this is various ways in which help can come, but there's no burden for anybody on the outside to help out as much as a gift. Individually, we all have the responsibility to take care of our own actions, to try to make sure we're trying to exude, ooze even, love more so than anything else. And if we see anything to the contrary, oftentimes in other people's reactions to us, that's different, that conveys you're not responding as if you see my oozing of love. Maybe I'm not as effective at it as I thought. Did I hurt you? Whoa, I didn't even intend to. And you know what? If you can help me understand, great. But that's a gift. I'm going to do my best to learn on my own so that I can reduce the likelihood that I make you feel that way again. It is my responsibility as the offender. Anything else anybody gives you or anybody else is bonus. And if we keep that in mind, then we can all reduce the shame that paralyzes growth and say, hey, anybody else have a clue? Help me out while I'm trying myself first and foremost.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good distinction.
Thank you.
What I like about that distinction between, like, is it my responsibility or is it just a gift, is that, you know, I've had that where I've worked with sexual abuse victims who, you know, they've been abused. And I've had a couple who have, because the abuser was in the family, have had circumstances take place where they were, you know, 20 years later at a funeral or something like that, and their abuser was there. And that was actually very therapeutic for them because they see that that person is so small or frail, or they're not the imposing, big, evil person that's been in their heart and in their mind for decades. And that's been very liberating. Like, he's just a frail old man or whatever. And so that's like, that's a situation that could be healing. But I would never tell people to go and hang out with the person who violated them. And also, and you know, the other thing about that is that you can, if you've been hurt or if you've suffered for some reason, you know, in general, that can be a great motivator to do a lot of good work. Like, if you have been sexually abused, that could be like a great motivator to help sexual abuse survivors. And that's different than being responsible to stop future sexual abuse. And it's a way to turn your suffering into something good, but that doesn't mean I'm responsible to stop sexual abuse or anything like that. So great distinction.
Yeah. Yes. And we would never, ever, ever tell someone that they are supposed to, out of love, stay in a situation that is unsafe. Never would we say out of love, out of showing that you're a kingdom person, that you're trying to subscribe worth and value, stay in that situation. We would never say that. And so I love the distinction that Lambert's made and that Dan elaborated on. Please hear us on that. That is not ever the answer from us. So we want you to be in safe, healthy situations and relationships. If you're not, we want you to get help and get free of that. Never do we feel like, well, as a kingdom person, you're called to love no matter what. And yes, we are, but that doesn't mean we stay in those situations that are so not safe for us. Okay, good?
Amen.
All right. Okay. So Lambers, one of the things that you said that I really, really enjoyed, and Dan alluded to it earlier in his summary, is when you talked about how all emotion is legitimate. And I believe that. So I feel like it is. We're humans. We're emotional beings. So all of that is legitimate. It's what we do with it that can get a little tricky. But do you think a person can hang on to anger, which is a legitimate emotion? Can they hang on to it for too long?
Yes, definitely. I put that in the category of you can have too much of a good thing. The feelings are legitimate. They're going to be legitimate either way. But just like food, you can have too much of a good thing. If you have too much of that emotion for too long, too sustainable, long past its sustainability, then it, as we talked about in the panel, it's outlived its function. And so just like I have a history of being a happy, optimistic guy. And it wasn't until I got grown, particularly not until I met my wife and she helped me realize, being happy all the time isn't always appropriate. Sometimes it's okay to be sad. It's not against your faith. Sometimes it's okay to express a variety of emotions. It's kind of like that joy. That if it outlives its purpose, its time, then it can be unhealthy. And so in that anger emotions, it can be protective to help us be alert to situations that need to change. But when the situation passes, if you've actually changed it, then to hold on to it can be detrimental. There's physiological symptoms that it can have. Holding on to anger, it can lead to anxiety and tension. It can skew our views of other people. That which had a good purpose, that helped you do a good thing, that motivated you to change a legitimate situation that needed to be changed, is no longer beneficial if you're holding on to it. It may be difficult to experience joy. It may be difficult to build trust with people who are earning that trust in action, but it can skew our views. So even if it's a good thing, if it's outlived its time, we can hold on to it for too long. And that's where sometimes that personality thing, some people have experienced legitimate experiences, multiple experiences that needed a certain emotional response. And because of that sequence, then they just concluded falsely to themselves, this is just who I am. I'm just an angry person. This is just my attitude, things like that. And oftentimes it's not necessarily the case. You have been in enough situations that warranted it. But when you get the freedom to not be in that, it's almost like you haven't had enough practice not needing it. And so it's like, that's where the armor analogy that came up with before, it's like, well, you hold that armor too long. It's like, you understand, Lambers, I've been in so many situations where I felt attacked. I've had to have my armor up a lot. And I'll say, makes sense. I'll say, you're probably right. But when the situation comes when you don't, is it welded to your arm? Or do you have the ability emotionally to put it down? Is it easy? Absolutely not. Is it easy to rebuild trust after you've had enough situations that have warranted protecting yourself? Easy? No, easy is not the conversation. But worth it? Worth trying it for those close relationships and building beyond that is worth doing. And I'm very much a big fan of building trust over time, because oftentimes it gets skewed with this whole forgiveness thing, as if forgiveness is supposed to be instantaneous, everything's fine, the past never happened, and trust takes time. It's like, I can choose to forgive you. I can choose to trust you, but that doesn't mean everything is great. That means before I held my shield up and I didn't give you the opportunity to, because everything you gave was offensive, was abusive, was hurtful. Now I'm at least giving you the opportunity to. But that starts over time, a little bit over time. You get this much trust. And then as you show that you can be trusted with that much, I give you a little bit more. Trust and forgiveness isn't 0 to 100 in 60 seconds. It's I give the opportunity where I wasn't giving you the opportunity before. So we can hold on to that guard, keep it welded shut for too long. And we say, well, I would put it down when it's safe. But if we hold on to it for too long, we won't be able to see when it is safe, and it skews our perspective. And so even if it's just a check-in, just a peeking over, it's being willing to put it down and no threat, no threat, no threat, as is warranted. So I'm not asking people to just put down their guard and just be happy. Oh, no, no, no. But if you are at least aware, let me make sure I'm not holding on to it any longer than I need to. Even if you're at least looking for that need to be lessened, you might be pleasantly surprised by how much the threats have at least paused, and you can enjoy life, strengthen your relationships around you with people who have been waiting for you to put down your guard and showing you they can trust you, or you can trust them. But we need to be able to conceptualize the idea that it can be too much of a good thing.
Yeah.
That's great.
When you were talking, Lambers, thank you. I just kept thinking, once again, this is why we need other people in our lives. We need community around us, because if you've held on to anger so long, whether or not it was justified, whether or not it was meant to protect you from something, and you've built up that armor, that's going to be the only lens through which you see folks, right? Whether that's their intent or not, or the reality or not. And so sometimes if you're so skewed, maybe for really good reasons, but if you don't have people in your life to say, hey, let's talk about this. Do you realize that you still have this protection up all around you? It would be really hard to maybe even recognize it yourself, to begin to take down the shield. And so it feels like almost everything we talk about here comes back to having a relationship and community with others. But that's kind of important, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep. Definitely. Yeah. And that was a good point too. How it can become part of your identity, and it's so sneaky how our life experiences can become part of our identity, especially some of these emotional things where you grow up in a family system, and that family system has a systematic way of creating this type of emotional response in you. And so it does feel like that's just who I am, because that's the situation that I've always been in. And it's a way of internalizing the situation and thinking that emotional, constellation that you live in is inevitable. But a lot of times it's not. A lot of times it's, you need to give yourself a chance to be in different circumstances. And so I think that's really, really great. And I also like the idea of, especially when it comes to anger or any type of emotion that you're really holding on to, because maybe you've needed it for so long, just like allowing other people a chance so that you can test them. And so you're lowering that guard just a little bit. And so that you're basically a scientist. You're seeing, let's see how this person does. I'm taking notes. Oh, okay. Maybe next time I can lower my guard a little bit more, and maybe I go too far, and next time I have to go back up. I mean, I don't know, but I love that way of thinking of it, because there's a certain amount of hope when you give people a chance that you have, and that hope by itself is nourishing. And when you've always got that emotional guard up, you're always living in that state that's totally lacking in hope. And we need that, and we need to rely on others, and so we have to give them chances. And so I think that's just wonderful.
Absolutely. Hey, Dan, you were wondering about and wanted to ask Lambers about the relationship between depression and anger. This would be a good spot to dive into.
Well, absolutely. I've been in mental health for a long time. One of the kind of principles that I've heard so many times is that for a lot of people, depression is anger turned inward. And I don't know if that's always the case, but that's been a very helpful motif that I've seen. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on that, and if you've heard that, and if you subscribe to that idea.
Yes. I think there's merit to that. I'm often hesitant to prescribe always or never to things, because there's various reasons that influence feelings of depression. So a lot of times it very much is inward self-loathing. You can have judgments about other people. You can have judgments about yourself. I'm not worthy. I'm so low. I don't have any gifts. I don't have anything to offer. Nobody wants to be around me, that type of stuff. And that's even an oversimplified version. It goes way deeper than that. Once it hits at our core insecurities, and I don't mean as weaknesses, just I can offend you with something different than I can offend you with, and it might be different than what's offending me. So those inward, everyone says we're our own worst critic. And so with depression, oftentimes it can go even worse than that, because you can hurt you better than anybody else, and we do that on our mind. But I'm cautious to say, like, that's just the totality of what depression is, because oftentimes depression is outward as well. I feel hopeless about my environment. I've experienced so many things. I feel hopeless and helpless. That balance, that's not really about me being a bad person as much as I've tried to fix the situation and nothing matters. I've tried to do that, and I've tried and I've tried and I've tried, but nothing works. And I just feel hopeless and helpless and distraught and discouraged. And that isn't necessarily always associated with any self-anger, but it's hard to see from the outside. It's hard to, you can't read minds. And so having that balance says, yes, sometimes it is that. And if you can plant seeds in there that impart value in someone else, that can not only be great for that person, but model for them how to do it in somebody else if they get strong enough emotionally to offer that grace gift, not a responsibility, that gift to someone else. But then also not to assume that everyone who has depression is having self-anger, because then you impart all these good things where you're great and you have these gifts. It's like, yeah, I'm not really worried about that. But none of that greatness is changing my work situation, changing my family, changing my health, changing all that kind of stuff. So thank you, but you can stop now. So if we have that balance in our mind, then we can offer what seems reasonable to us at the time, based on what we can see, which will be change for all of us. But if we adapt to what they are feeling, or at least at the very least, opening ourselves up to, if not that, help me understand what you are feeling. Not in that teach me, because I'm not the one being the abuser at this point. I'm coming alongside, help me understand. And then all efforts go to, not advice, all efforts go to empathy. So I can see, man, I can be the optimist all I want, but wow, if I had that many disappointments, I'd be frustrated too. I can only imagine what you might be going through. My little bit of understanding, you got to be feeling it even worse. Wow, it's amazing that you even holding up so strong. Wow, that's tough, and then come alongside to help. And then they might feel like, okay, I gave you a little bit and you didn't shove it down my throat. See that we're back to that trust thing again. Can I trust you with, I have to guard my emotions. Can I trust you with a little bit? Or will you say, wait, that's all you got? All this depression stuff, and that's the only summary? Fine then. You just show me I can't trust you. Show me that I can, that you can be trusted with this little morsel that I give you. You say, thank you for giving me that little bit. I will hold on to it. It's like, oh, maybe I can give you a little bit more. Maybe I can share and open up a little bit more because you've shown that I can trust you with it. See, it's the same category. So that's why it's related to that anger piece. Is all of our feelings are legitimate, but we don't always show that we can handle it well. And if we learn to cultivate that when it's not a big issue, then when it is big, anger or depression, we know how to come alongside people and say the feelings are legitimate. Let's do our best to not judge other people's feelings, even when they're inconvenient, even when we don't understand them. It's legitimate feeling. Help me to understand why they're expressing it that way, what's motivated it, and then see what happens after that.
Good word. That's great.
Thank you, Lambers. This is what happens when we're in a conversation that we're so enjoying. The time flies by. So we're going to ask one more question, Lambers, because we don't want to let you go just yet. And then after we ask this last question, we would love just to hear from you about your work, what you're doing, the diversity training that you have going on. I just think it would be great for the people to hear that from you as well. Okay.
Sure.
All right. So many people, I think, have been in this particular situation. And so what can you say when someone is just asking, in all honesty, how do I help someone whom I love in my life who struggles with anger?
Yes. There's one thing to wrestle with and accept our own anger, but then to see somebody else who's struggling with anger, it's a difficult spot to have. And my main go-to is always to try to not only see the potential legitimacy of the feeling of anger, despite how they're expressing it, and then show them that you want to try to understand that motivation as opposed to just stop their actions. A lot of times people get so focused on, yeah, you might have legitimate feelings, but don't talk to me that way. Or lower your voice. Or, oh, well, you know what? How do you expect anybody to listen to you if you're always coming in with that attitude? Those are all the symptoms. Those are all the outward manifestations when not enough time has been given to what feeling was motivated. Now, nobody wants to be feeling like the anger is directed toward them or somebody care about. I totally understand that. But in those moments where the question was like, if you're at a point where you want to offer that gift to somebody who's angry and you want to legitimately try to help them reduce it, see them as someone who is expressing anger because they feel the need to. Just like we were talking about in the panel, there's something that needs to change. There's an injustice in a situation, whether it be broader society or just in their life. Something needs to change, and for whatever reason, they feel like anger is the only way they can express it. Well, what a great option to offer is another way to express it. You're not feeling heard, so you feel like you have to say it louder. I can listen. You don't feel like anybody understands, so you have to say it louder and with emotion, with anger. I'm willing to understand. You don't have to use that as your only option. If you're open, if you're willing, I want to take the time to help you understand. If you really want to help someone as opposed to fix someone, correct someone, judge someone, if you want to help them, then come alongside behind the armor and say, hey, if ever you're interested in putting that down, I want to offer you an opportunity to have a trust experience, a safe experience. That you don't have to have all the words, but just to say, hey, can you help me understand why you feel so passionately about this? Come along.
Wow.
No judging language. You hear what I said? Why you feel so passionately about this, as opposed to why can't you just speak this way? Why do you have to do this towards somebody else when it's almost like collateral damage? Somebody else is hurt by just my expression of feeling. If you come alongside them and give them that benefit of the doubt, then they might be able to say, hey, that's different than anybody else is offering. Let me see if I can trust you. And then we come back to that again. Offer to come behind the curtain, not jump behind the curtain, slash the curtain back, look at them in their anger, and like, tell me about the fear that's behind you yelling in my face. No, that might not be received that well. But
that might not work out.
No, but to say, I see you feel really passionate about this. Is there anything I can do to help you feel more comfortable in sharing this? Can you help me understand more so that I can work with you in changing that situation? Then you never know what they'll say. Now, on one hand, they might be pleasantly surprised and say, you know what? I'm cautious, but I'll take you up on that. On the other hand, you have to prepare for, no, there's nothing you can do, partly because I don't believe that I can really trust you. You're just like everybody else who said that, but then burned me as soon as I gave them a chance. Again, even if that happens, oftentimes it's about reacting to a situation that preceded you than you. I'm genuinely trying to help, and they're mad that I'm trying to help. They're not mad that you're trying to help. They're mad that they want to be able to trust you, but don't know that they can. No specific person, no specific situation. That's just how our feelings work. But if you stand your ground and say, okay, I get that you don't trust me, I will still offer that help. Rain check. If you want it, open invitation. I'm here. But whatever you're going to get is not attack back. Whatever you're going to get is not a defensiveness. You're not going to get a fine in. Don't ask me for nothing again. Nope. I can be trusted with that expression, and I'm still not going to take the bait to throw it back in your face. That shows that when the time is right, I'm here. Let me know. And if you offer that, then you set up an environment for them to say, maybe not now, but if you offer that again, or maybe I'll come out and check that out. You provide yourself a safe, you provide a safe environment. You become that safe environment to express the feelings behind it. And then if you can help them brainstorm ways to actually change the situation, even better. But you don't have to have all the solutions to their problem to help them feel heard so that they can express it in a healthier way.
That's great.
So good. Dan, I have a feeling you have I'm sure your head was popping and thoughts were going as Lambers was talking. So I'm going to give you a chance, Dan.
Yeah, two quick things.
Okay.
Working, even when people are psychotic, and I've worked with psychotic people who are just very angry because they feel like we're with the FBI or they feel like their brains are melting or whatever. Even in a psychotic state, the best de-escalator is to just make them realize that you're listening to them. If they know that you're listening, that is the best de-escalator that there is, because like you said, Lambers, a lot of times they're banging around and throwing chairs because they don't feel heard. They don't feel like nobody gets it. And if somebody at least shows a little effort, that's the best de-escalator I've found. The other thing is, and this is a good transition to you talking about some of the services you provide. How perfect is all of this discussion about what we're experiencing right now with race in America, and some of the frustrations between different church bodies and different denominations and different types of people with different opinions about the race issue, and and Woodland Hills' stance that we want to, lament with our brothers and sisters who are different races, and we want to be supportive of that, and some of the pushback that Greg has gotten for some of the stances that he's taken, where he's trying to listen and he's trying to lament with, and that just taps into exactly the stuff that you're talking about, Lambers, where there's a lot of our biracial, our Black and brown brothers and sisters who feel like they are not being heard, and what a great opportunity for Woodland Hills to be a place where, if we're white here, we listen, and it just seems like it fits well with what you're saying, and I'm probably fumbling all over it. But what can you say about that, how this relates to the race issues that we're having, and also some of the services that you provide?
Yes, and it's a very smooth transition because I'm a marriage and family therapist. I've been doing this for about almost 20 years now, and for the past 6 years or so, I've been leading diversity trainings, multicultural awareness and diversity trainings. And I didn't get into doing that because I want to be a diversity, equity, and inclusion specialist and teach policies and things like that. I'll leave that to professionals who do that. Mine is very similar because on the couch, I have couples who have difficulty understanding each other, and I get a chance to help them clarify some misunderstandings, some reasonable misunderstandings that were based on their experiences, but were still misunderstandings, and help them bridge that gap to say, oh, that's different. Oh, that's inconvenient. That's not what I thought. But now that I understand it better, now that I understand the differences better, I understand you better, and it helps us coexist. Do that with couples, do that with families as a whole, siblings, and also it transitions in the workplace. Help them understand their coworkers, their bosses, their customers, and realizing that this whole cultural differences is not always about race. It starts with race in a lot of conversations, but we can be similar and different to people in a lot of different ways. We can be we have differences in race and ethnicity, gender, socioeconomic status, work experience, family roles. We can be different in a lot of different ways that make it seem like those are thems and these are us's. But even the people who you feel are completely like you are different from you in some ways, and people who you feel are completely different are different in a lot of ways, but also have some similarities. And once you start to navigate those, it's not about, I just don't understand them and I just can't work with them. When you realize those similarities, it can join in together, and it can help to reduce some of those offenses that get in the way when you have the headliner things. Well, whose side are you on? Their side or our side? It's like we have a lot of similarities with them, and then people who are on our side, a lot of differences as well. If we learn to bridge the gap with increased empathy, reduced anger that lasted too long, but if we learn to accept anger as legitimate, then we can say, well, hey, is there a situation that they see that's unjust that I just haven't seen? See, sometimes, people are expressing things where it's almost like that has been expressed for too long, or in such a long, high intensity way. It's like, it seems too long for you because it's new to you. But if you realize where that's coming from, then it can go a different way. And so I've been I started off help training my mental health professional colleagues who they're trying to empathize with their clients who they're helping. They're trained to do a lot of good stuff, but that uncomfortability when a client is from a different background, it's like, oh, and then it transitioned into training pastors and then training teachers who are trying to understand their students. We're from different backgrounds. How can we still empathize together? So that's just led into various organizations that call me out, especially because a lot of times people have had bad experiences. That they'll come up to me on a break and say, you know what, I've been to other diversity trainings. And the whole thing is about, well, you should do this. And if you're doing this, you're already bad. And how could you not know this? And it's like a whole bunch of shame and judgment. And there's this fundamental principle. It's like we have to accept our own ignorance. It's not as a character state as opposed to lack of knowledge. Not you know.
Yeah.
And so we all have knowledge that we need to learn about. And so just as you need to learn about others, there's a lot of people who can learn about you. We're all on the same page. A lot of things that seem offensive are people who had no clue that that was even an offensive thing. And so it's not just like a blanket pass. You shouldn't be hurt. No, be hurt. But then as much as possible, let's all share information. Let's all give grace room as appropriate, and then grow. And we can reduce a lot of these offenses and then join together in reducing the legitimate experiences of injustice and say, okay, before I seemed like I was on the opposite side. Before I was just on the ignorant side. I didn't experience it personally. I had no reason to know. Now that I see it and allow myself to feel, I feel something about that too. Not as much as you who've experienced it for a lot longer, but I feel something. And you know what? I'm going to embrace that no longer than necessary, but long enough for me to feel, show you empathy, and join with you so that you can feel seen, feel understood, and hopefully change the situation so you don't even have to feel that any longer if enough people are working together. So that's where between working with people on the couch and one-on-one or helping people as an organization help reduce those offenses, it's just great because it's all relational, helping people feel seen and join together, which is our whole body of Christ moment anyway, where we're supposed to be joining together to help each other and paving the way to experience God's love anyway. So it all works together, and it's so
Amen. So good. So good. Remind folks one more time, Lambert, is the name of the organization you work with, the counseling center that you work with.
So for counseling, I work at Christian Heart Counseling in Stillwater. And for my diversity trainings, I'm at diversitymadesimple.com. And anybody who's interested, let me know.
Awesome. Thank you, Lambers. I'm telling you, today's MuseCast was like a mental health day. It was a good self-care day. And so I hope you all really just took it in and let the Lord speak to you. Let the Spirit really speak to your heart with some of these things that Lambert shared with us, and Dan as well. Thank you for joining us. Tune in next week. We'll continue the conversation from Sunday's sermon like we always do. Be well, everyone. Thanks so much. Thank you, Lambert.
Bye, guys.